Hi, good morning, class. This video is for period two. Today is Tuesday, April 21st. All right. And the purpose of this video is to go over um, the presentation, classification presentation. So, all of you should be here on Google Classroom. Click on period two. If you go into classwork, there you go. And you click on your homework, you should see two things. First, you can see the homework, levels of classification homework, and then the presentation. So let's click on the presentation and we'll go over it. All right. This will take about 10 minutes. The instructions, we'll go over the website in a minute. State that you should watch this video, check the presentation on your own, and then use this presentation to do the homework. By the way, while we wait to load, don't forget to check in. Check in today. Go on to Google Classroom. If you're there already, don't forget to check in right here. Google Forms, sign in. All right? Whenever you have science, come here, check in, write your name, and boom, you're done. Easy points. Let's see. I guess we can start now. All right? So here we go, classification. And this is the next topic that we will be learning in our journey through ecology, the study of living things and how things interact with the environment. Well, when we think about nature, it's easier to think about living things if they are well organized. All right? An organization is a big thing. It starts always with something broad into something specific. For example, if I order something from the mail, in the mail it says, all right, it has to go somewhere within the United States. That's one. Then it has to go somewhere in New Jersey, a little bit smaller, more specific. From New Jersey to Bergen County, more specific. Bergen County to Hackensack, then to my street, then to my address, and then to my apartment. All right? From something really broad into something very specific. So that way, you can see where I am, where I belong, right? In other words, in classifying things, we're not talking about an address, but we're talking about also bringing something into more specific. Where do living things belong? If we try to organize all living things on Earth, and if you look at the definition here, classification is a process of grouping things based on their shared traits. We've learned a lot about traits during the year, right? Where they come from, how are they coded in DNA, from mom and dad, or the types of reproduction, from sexual, asexual. You know, Biologists use this type of organization in living things, looking once again at their traits. And if you study how to classify new living things on Earth, don't forget that we still haven't found millions of species of animals, bacteria, protists, fungi, plants. Right? If you find a new thing, there's a science that studies how to name that living thing. See where they belong in nature. And that's called taxonomy, right there. All right. So, who invented this system? There were many systems before, but this is the one we use now, made by Carolus Linnaeus from Sweden. And he just used observable features before we called it traits. All right. So that makes sense. So based on what you look like, if many of you look the same, for example, I don't know, all these living things eat animals. They have that big trait. Then you belong in this group. All right. But he devised a system in which once everything is classified, you can actually call it by two names. Um, the use of two names is not unique. My name is Mario Santibáñez, of course. If you think about other names, Carlos Lopez, Joana Rodriguez, anything, Usually we use that system here as well, two names. In science, we also use two names to classify and identify species. And this guy right here is the one that came up with the system. So what two names do we use? And to know that, I have an example. We use something called genus, which will be the first name in this species, and species, of course, right? For example, this crab right here, his scientific name, it's Clinectes sapidus, genus and species. Two names, binomial nomenclature. Now, it's not the name of that one crab, but it's the name of all the crabs that this crab can reproduce with and make other crabs, meaning they belong to the same species. Okay? So where does this come from, genus and species? It actually comes from the 7 levels of classification, which begins in kingdom, very broad, right? We went over kingdoms before, animals, plants, fungi, etc. Phylum, if you belong to this kingdom. In this example right here, do you have an spinal cord? If the answer is yes, all right, you belong to the phylum Chordata. Class, now in that phylum, looking at the example, Animalia Chordata. Can you fly? Yes. Well, now you belong to the class Aves. All right, and then continues to answer a few questions until you get to the last two: family, genus, and species. And those last two, genus and species, at the end, right here, I know that thing is appearing there right now, but the genus and species would be the scientific name of that group of living things. Even though my name is Mario Santibanez, we belong to Homo erectus. That is our species name. All right? So how do we use this? In taxonomies, use something called a dichotomous key. Not tomorrow, 2 days from now, you guys will learn how to use these keys. In fact, if we have time, you'll be able to make one of those keys by yourself. So that way, you know exactly how it works. And it's nothing more than just asking questions, yes or no. Once again, do you move and eat? Yes, you're an animal. Do you move and eat? No. Um, do you use photosynthesis as a main source of energy? Yes, then you may be something else, maybe a plant. Yes or no, yes or no. Based on those keys, dichotomous keys. Based on those questions, yes or no, we can see where you belong. For example, if you do have a spinal cord, then guess what? You're a vertebrate. If you're a vertebrate, do you live in the water most of the time, but you can also live on land part-time? Then guess what? You're an amphibian. Maybe you can fly. You're a bird. Maybe you're always living in the water. You're a fish. Maybe you drink milk when you're born. You're a mammal. Maybe you live on land only, but yet you do not produce your own heat, body heat. Oh, well, guess what? You're a reptile. And those are just basic questions. There's many more, but using these dichotomous keys, we can identify your species, see where you are. All right? Well, not you, but all living things on Earth, and not just vertebrates, but also invertebrates. Okay? Based on your characteristics, you may be a jellyfish, worm, arthropod. If you look at an arthropod, arthro meaning joints, like this, joint, all these joints, right? We are able to move around our joints. That's what arthro mean. Pods meaning feet. Okay, meaning that their feet have joints. You'll belong to one of these three groups: insects, crustaceans, spiders. And then based on more questions in the dichotomous keys, we can see where you are. Well, those living things, where they belong in nature. All right, that's the purpose of classification. Where do things belong? Now, there's also diagrams that come with this that can show you an evolutionary pattern. So maybe there was all of these living things. Do they have jaws? Boom, they belong right there. And out of those, do they have lungs? Can they breathe in air? Yes, then all of these guys will be organized in the next branch. Do they have claws or nails? Boom. If the answer is yes, they belong right here. Um, and so on. Let me show you another example in these diagrams. Once again, do they have a spinal cord? Yes. Boom. All of them belong up there. Do they have a bony skeleton? Yes. Then all of these guys right here belong there, but not the fish. The fish is a cartilaginous a living thing. It's made, the bones here, or what is would be bones in a shark, are made of the same substance as your sternum. It's very soft, or your nose, or your ear, cartilage. All right, but these guys know, including ourselves, we have very bony skeleton. Very hard. It's not flexible. Like, I'm not going to be able to bend my arm. All right, it's very sturdy, but not sharks. Sharks can bend their skeletal systems. It's not bony. But anyway, do they have four limbs, legs and arms? If the answer is yes, then boom, you belong in this group. And thanks to classification, we have an idea. All right, if all of these guys have the same trait, maybe they have the same DNA. You're right. Maybe they have the same DNA. And based on the changes of DNA, there will be a changes of traits. And we can follow that. Okay, we can check if this is true by checking on these living things' DNA. And we found it to be true. Primates, different characteristics there. And this is our branch actually. That's where we belong. This doesn't mean that we come from any of them. It means that we belong to the same group. All right? Not a species, but just the same group. We have our own genus and our own species, but we kind of share a few other traits with these living things. That's all it means. All right, it says 5 kingdoms here. It should say 6. Don't forget, bacteria, there are 2. Protists, fungi, plants, and animals, each one of those with their own traits. I'm going to move a little bit faster now. I don't want this to go past 10 or 15 minutes tops. But if you read this, don't forget, you have to read this on your own. Read all the traits. Why do these living things belong there? Where do things belong in nature? One of the purpose of classification. So if you have these traits, you belong in one of the 2 kingdoms of bacteria. Or maybe you have these traits, in which you're made of one cell, but you're not a bacteria. Maybe you eat, you move and eat, but you're not an animal. You use photosynthesis, but you're not a plant. You reproduce using spores like fungi, but you're not a fungi. Then guess what? If you kind of have those combinations of traits, then you belong in this kingdom, protist. All right. Same thing for fungi. There's a few traits right there. There's different groups of fungi. Plants, there's different groups of plants. Same thing for animals, different groups of animals. Where do things belong? All right. So coming back to the 7 levels of classification, someone would follow this. You find a living thing based on a few questions. What is your kingdom? What is your phylum? What is your class? What is your order, family, genus, and species? And don't forget, genus and species, your scientific name. Here's a way of memorizing this. You don't need to know this. Just know how to use it. All right? For example, the Sumatran tiger, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Felidae, genus Panthera, species Tigris. All right, and the scientific name for this guy are the last 2, Panthera tigris. All right. Let's see. So why do they use these weird names? Don't forget, your parents talk a little bit different than you, even if it's the same language. And your grandparents maybe talk a little bit different than you. And imagine that going on from before and that going on after. Your kids will talk a little bit different than you. Your grandkids will talk a little bit different than you. Our language, when it's used, it changes. It's not just us as living things that change, but also language. A language that is not used is Latin or Greek. So guess what? These names are right here. They're never going to change. Nobody uses them. So they are the perfect words to use to identify a living thing, because since nobody is using these words, they're never going to change. So this living thing will always be known as a Panthera tigris. That's a common name, by the way, Sumatran tiger. All right, and that's it. I'm going to post the homework. Read this on your own again. There's a few questions from this presentation. All right, see you in a few.